Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'll be giving my spoiler review. Yes, this is a spoiler review for Spider-Man Brand New Day. By the way, that was your warning. You're not going to get another one within this video. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on those post notifications. You're going to find when I post a new video. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Just like in the last video, I'll be going over the pros and the cons with this movie, starting with the cons first. My first con with this movie is Jean Grey's consumption of the plot. And yes, Sadie Sink's character, her mystery character, is surprisingly, shockingly Jean Grey. I say that very sarcastically because to me, it was almost entirely very obvious that she was gonna be playing this character. One of the main reasons why this is a con is because I went into this movie, even with all the knowledge and all the trailers that I've seen, hoping that Scorpion or Tombstone, who was in this movie for like 10 to 20 seconds, I think, would have or play a bigger role. I came in here just thinking to myself that maybe the trailers were misleading and we were actually gonna get a whole bunch of classic Spider-Man themes and elements in this movie, like a classic villain, like Scorpion or Tombstone. But no, it's Jean Grey as the supposed quote-unquote villain in this movie. And this isn't entirely a bad thing. It's just not what I was expecting. I knew she was gonna be in this movie and play some type of a villain role, but I didn't know it was gonna be that big. That's kind of my fault for expecting anything else. But still, after I left that theater, I did kind of feel like I wanted something like Scorpion being the main villain or Tombstone pulling all the strings behind the scenes, stuff like that. I was really hoping for something like that. But I will say it is not that big of a deal because the way that they portrayed Jean as the villain in this movie was done really, really well. But with that, let's move on to my next con of this film, which is the Hulk fight aftermath. I want to start this off by saying that the Hulk fight itself was actually really, really good. I personally enjoyed it a lot. They found a way for Peter to not die during this fight against this savage Hulk, whilst also not nerfing the Hulk in this fight. Hulk looks his best during this fight, and it was just so refreshing seeing Savage Hulk back in the MCU after years of having Smart Hulk as our Hulk in the MCU. But here's my problem with this. The ending / aftermath of the fight. In the aftermath of this fight, Hulk sees a reflection of himself, and I believe this is Bruce seeing through the eyes of Hulk and seeing a monster, and I think Bruce kind of takes control back a little bit more, and he decides to back off and just kind of give up during the fight, falling off of the building and turning back into Bruce Banner. Now, the reason why I do not like this ending is because to me, it still feels like Marvel isn't doing Hulk right. I personally think that having Hulk still be viewed or viewing himself or even Bruce viewing Hulk as a monster at this point in the MCU after Hulk being a character in the MCU for the past decade and a half, to still have Bruce view him as a monster and not as a potential hero is insane to me. I just feel like Hulk has had zero development since Thor Ragnarok, which if you ask me is the best we've gotten the Hulk. In this movie, he's not just a mindless creature. He's portrayed as a person who can be rationed with and who can think intelligently and have conversations with people like Thor in that movie. And then years pass and we finally get Savage Hulk appear in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Whether this was Hulk or Bruce in this scene, the fact that either of them still view the Hulk as a mindless, raging, dangerous, world-ending monster is absolutely ridiculous to me. And then at the end of this, they had Bruce transferred to a psychic ward or a psychiatric ward or whatever, which to me feels like Marvel is putting a lock on his character. Me personally, I would have rather had this fight end with Hulk realizing who he's fighting and what he's doing and stopping himself. Kind of like in Age of Ultron when he finally broke free of Wanda's mind control or curse or whatever, and he realized all his damage and he calmed himself down. So something like that happening in this movie. And instead of him just giving up, instead he just runs away. Like he jumps off the building, runs a couple of feet, and then like super jumps across the country, lands in this deserted land, and then that's it. That's all we see of him. And instead of the news report that Ned is watching saying Bruce is being transferred to a psychiatric ward to get help or whatever, it could have said Hulk has fled the state and maybe the country and authorities are still currently looking for him. That to me would have been so much better because it leaves an opening for Marvel to do something more with the character and maybe start a potential actual arc and character development for him, maybe going into his next solo movie if they ever do that or ever decide to do that. But anyways, I'm gonna get to my last and final complaint with this movie. movie, which is that... Okay, so while editing this video, I realized that this last con that I had with the movie is kind of stupid. So I've decided to cut it out the video entirely. We're gonna jump right into the pros that I have with this movie instead. But yeah, those are all my cons I have with this movie. Now let's go into the pros. Now anyways, one of my biggest pros with this movie is how they handled Ned and MJ. Because I remember when this movie was being announced, everybody was literally hoping they would not bring back Ned or MJ in this movie and kind of give Peter a fresh start when it comes to his personal life. I myself were one of those people, and when I saw that there was going to be this movie pretty consistently and a lot, I was hoping that they weren't gonna have like some crazy role where they somehow remember him and they're all best friends again and yada yada yada, because to me, if that happened, that would have been considered terrible writing. Instead, they play a pretty good role in this movie, especially MJ. In this movie, MJ actually finds out who Spider-Man is, and the spell works completely. Like, that is not neglected when she sees his face. She has no idea who this person is. She also finds the note that Peter wrote to her and was gonna say to her while they were in the coffee shop, and goes like, I'm pretty sure the person that you wrote this to was amazing and we had a great life, but I don't know you, I don't love you. Kind of like another Gamora scene, which is incredibly sad for Peter. I'm pretty sure he was hoping that she was going to remember him and they would get back together. But I'm happy this happened, because if you ask me, I am tired of Peter having just this one love interest for this long. I feel like it's time to introduce a new love interest. Even if this new love interest is not forever and he does eventually go back to MJ, I think that's fine. But for now, I think we need to introduce Gwen or some different type of love interest. I think them bringing back Peter and Ned's friendship at the end of the film is honestly a great move. I personally think that this version of Peter and his best friend is the best Peter and best friend duo that we have in live action. Toby and Andrew's best friend dynamic in their movies are just not as good as Peter and Ned's are in all of Tom's movies. Now, moving on to my second pro of this film, which is the world building. Now, Spider-Man movies have a bad rep of having a lot of things going on in their movies and being called overstuffed and not paced correctly and all this crap. But Spider-Man Brand New Day does this perfectly. There's a lot of characters in this movie and a lot of arcs, but somehow it does not feel overstuffed in my opinion. I think it's actually done beautifully how every character in this movie has their own arc, or at least every major character like Punisher and Jane and Peter. They all have their own arcs and own things going on, but it all meshes pretty well in this movie. And this also has some of the best world building of all time. This movie does a great job introducing Jean Grey and kickstarting the mutant saga with Jean Grey. And also with the power dampeners, this will absolutely be used in future X-Men movies to take away the X-Men's powers. This movie also gives us more lore and depth to the character of Punisher. There's this big lore that we haven't seen on screen where Spider-Man apparently saved Punisher on Staten Island, which I am dying to see. This movie also has us see a different side to Punisher, a more sympathetic and emotional side to his character, as we see how much he genuinely cares for Peter in this movie, which I personally think is one of the greatest aspects of this movie, Punisher and Peter's relationship. And I would count Bruce as another part of this world building, but I don't like the way that they handled his character in this movie, at least at the end of it. Then bringing back Savage Hulk is a great move, but trapping him in Bruce's body again just sucks. But anyways, let's move on to my next pro of this movie, which is Punisher and Peter's dynamic. Easily one of the best dynamic Peter / Spider-Man has ever had with anybody across all his films. It just feels so natural and real. Punisher has a genuine brotherly love towards Peter, and this movie makes you feel how much Punisher actually cares for Spider-Man or Peter in this movie. Moving on to my next pro of this movie is the visuals. I mean, it's just honestly breathtaking. There's so many shots in this movie that are just beautiful. The CGI and the green screens or blue screens or whatever are amazing. You can barely notice them, or at least I barely noticed them when I watched the movie. Everything from the rain to the sunsets to just the sky view of the city looked beautiful, and him swinging through the city looked amazing too. Destin Daniel Craig showed us that it is absolutely possible to have practical swinging and have it look good and not boring, like John Watts said. And moving on with my final pro with this movie, which is the action sequences. And I think the reason why I love these sequences so much is because Peter's swinging scenes and the way that he uses his webs in every single action sequence that we see him in is done beautifully and perfectly. It looks so cool and it's choreographed so well. Honestly, some of the greatest action sequences we've ever gotten across all live action Spider-Man films. And also, Jean Grey's backstory in this movie is just so sad, but I can't wait to see more of her in the future of the MCU and more of Spider-Man in the future of the MCU. Let me know y'all's thoughts about this movie in the comments down below, and I'll catch you on my next video. Peace!